I'm fantasy author Elle Penelope, and welcome to My Imaginary Friends, a look behind the scenes of an author mapping the worlds in my head and making them a reality. Hello friends, today is Sunday, October 6th, 2019, and this is episode 35 of My Imaginary Friends. I'm Leslie. So, this week had a lot of best things. This was actually a really good week, a really full week packed with a lot of things happening. So let me rewind and start from the beginning. I'll do them in chronological order to make it easier for myself to remember. On Monday, I finished the synopsis for Book 4 of the Earthsinger Chronicles. Now, if you've been listening for a while, you will know that I've been struggling my way through figuring out what this book is. Did the fast draft, but still didn't know everything. But on Monday, it all came together. It all coalesced into a story that I understood. I knew what happens. I figured out what happens to everybody at every point in time. I know their motivations. I know where they end up. I always knew where they ended up, but I know the steps in between. And I might not know every minute detail, but I have the whole picture. There are dogs in here right now who are being noisy and licking and things. So if you hear that, if that's coming through on the microphone, sorry. They're both in here at the same time, which is unusual. So anyway, I know the story. All the pieces fell together in a way over the course of getting this synopsis written. So my synopsis is 11 pages long, which is fine. It's more detailed than anyone else would need, but I tried to put in the details so that I'll remember as I go through, this is what they're feeling, this is why, this is a reminder of what happened in a previous book to why they're doing this. So I feel really good about this. And, the whole process with knowing all of these pieces and then putting them together, it is kind of like a puzzle, but it's also Sherman's on some medication, so we use these pill pockets to give him his pills. And we come to the end of the bag, and pill pockets are really expensive. So we actually split them in half and then fit, pills into, so we can get 2 out of each one. And at the end, at the bottom of the bag, you're left with all these little pieces of these pill pocket things. And so I was trying to mash them all together and get one pill pocket of all these crumbles, and it didn't work. It was just too crumbly and they wouldn't stick together. I guess I could have wet it a little bit, but when I was doing that, I was like, this is putting my plot together, taking all these little pieces that I know and trying to mash it into something that is one cohesive entity. And luckily, doing it with my plot worked a little bit better than doing it with the pill pockets. But yes, so that was Monday's best thing. Tuesday's best thing was the release of Whispers of Shadow and Flame, Book 2. And so I did actually manage to write. I got up early and I met a friend on Google Hangouts and we wrote in the morning. And then I started doing the social media posts, which I had not planned well. The good planning that I did was to pre-schedule my newsletter post. So I had done that over the weekend. So I didn't have to worry about that. That just sent out at 6 a.m. and it was fine. I did not pre-schedule the social media posts, which I should have done. And so I actually had to go take a picture of the book or me with the book and then post it. And then a lot of the day is responding to everyone's posts. And the blog tour is going on and there is reviews being posted and things like that. So Tuesday was really great. I also I had sent the synopsis to my brother for his feedback because he's my first feedback person. And so Tuesday we had a nice long conversation about his thoughts about it and the strengths and weaknesses, because even though it's done, it doesn't mean it's done. It just means this is a huge milestone in this whole process of me understanding the story and all of the details from the story and coming into focus. So talked about that. I had a really nice chat with an author who was very generous and about telling me about experiences that she'd had. And so that was really amazing. And yeah, Tuesday was a great day. And then we went out to dinner, me and my husband, to celebrate the book launch. Wednesday and Thursday were a little bit low-key, or maybe it was just a blur after release day. I did take the train up to New York on Thursday because Friday morning was my signing at New York Comic Con. So Friday, I met one of the publicists at St. Martin's to get into Comic Con, and yeah, it was It was great. It was early enough that, there were a lot of people there, but it wasn't as crowded as it was going to be later on. So the signing went really well. We gave away a total of 50 books, split between Song of Blood and Stone and Whispers of Shadow and Flame. And I signed, obviously I signed them all, and I met a bunch of great people, and that was really fun. I actually really like doing the signings. And so afterwards, I didn't have anything else planned. I was just going to spend some time at Comic-Con and then later on meet a friend for dinner and then take the train back home. So I started walking around the exhibit hall, and so by the time I finished my signing, it was 11:30, 11:45, and a lot more people had come. And so it was a lot more crowded, and at that point really difficult just to walk down certain pathways just because of the crush of people, and also because people would stop and like get and take pictures of the cosplayers, or if you saw a Harley Quinn over there and a Joker over there, you get them together, and or you saw like three different types of Harley Quinns, or whatever character they were, and there was a Superman who was taking pictures with, I don't even, like, a lot of people I didn't even recognize. I had no idea what they were dressed up as, but a lot of really cool, interesting cosplayers. And so, yeah, they would stop and take these pictures. Like, there were like four Spider-Men at one point, and they started posing, and so everybody would stop around them and start taking pictures, and then the traffic would clog, and so that was an issue also. But I mean, it's not like I had anywhere to be at any specific time. And so I walked around for an hour, and then I got something to eat. And then I went to my friend Cerise's booth. Cerise Rennie Murphy has a booth there every year, and she sells her books, and she was there with author Lynn Emery. And I was just sitting resting. At that point, I was pretty tired. But just watching them kind of work the crowd and sell, and they're there for all 4 days in their booth. That is not my ministry. Like, my hat is so far off to them. I can do that for a few hours, like, and I think it's kind of fun. It's to kind of pitch the book and to see who might be interested in it, and the people who you don't necessarily think are interested are the ones who buy it a lot of times. But for 4 days at Comic-Con, oh my gosh, like, seriously, cheers, because couldn't do it. Oh, and Cerise just had a book release. The Wolf Queen Part 2 just came out on Thursday. So definitely check that out. Check out Part 1 first, obviously. But The Wolf Queen, it's epic fantasy in this African-inspired world. It's fantastic. Lots of action, and I highly recommend it. So check out The Wolf Queen by Cerise Rennie Murphy. I'll put a link in the show notes too. But as I was sitting there, I was like, this is quite overwhelming. And also, I started feeling sick. So I think I mentioned last week I was going to do gluten-free for October because of this test that I took. And I'm trying to, October's so full and so busy, and I would really like to just have as much energy as possible. And I know when I stop eating gluten, because I am reactive to it, I do have more energy and I'm less fatigued. And so this was my plan. Of course, it's a lot more difficult to do when you're traveling. But there's like a food court. There's actually a couple of different like places for food at the Javits Center, which is where New York Comic Con is. And so I stopped and I got something healthy. I got a poke bowl, which was basically just rice and chicken and vegetables. And there's a couple of things that I, told them not to put on it. And I had read the ingredients list and everything looked fine, but it still made me sick. Now, I'm not going to go into everything because I'm sure you're super interested in all of my like digestive issues, but I've had these issues for a very long time, and there's kind of, I'll get sick and not know why. Like, I'll eat regular things that I think are okay, and then blam. So I felt an onset of this thing happening, and I knew that I was in for like 4 hours of incredible pain and nausea, and I was like, I don't think I can stay here any longer. So I said goodbye to my friends, and I left. I was like, I'm going to go home and catch an earlier train. I texted my friend who I was supposed to have dinner with and apologized. It was a combination of the overwhelm and of knowing that I was in imminent danger. Not danger, but like things were going to get bad pretty soon. So, but going home required that I go back, get my bag, go take the subway to the train station, to Penn Station, and change my ticket and get on a train and be 3 hours on the train to go home. And so I started the beginning of this journey. And at one point I was very concerned that I was going to vomit on 11th Avenue. And while I'm sure that's not the worst thing that's ever happened on 11th Avenue, I did not want that to happen to me. So I stopped and I got a ginger ale at the drugstore. And there's been this meme going around, which is like, Black people, ginger ale is not medicine. And I'm like, sometimes ginger ale is medicine. Like, it didn't like fix things, but it prevented me from actually throwing up. So that was very nice. I appreciate ginger ale in those instances. So luckily, by the time I got to the subway, the nausea had subsided for a bit. I was able to make the trip without any issues, aside from being in incredible pain. So usually when this happens, I'm home and I could just get in the bed and curl up for like until it passes. But I have had it happen when I'm out, and it's unpleasant to say the least. So thankfully, I made it home. I was able to get in the bed and rest and start to recuperate from that exciting adventure. But overall, even though the end was kind of a bummer, I did have a good time. My husband and I have talked about trying to go to San Diego Comic-Con just as, spectators, even if I'm not doing anything authory there. But after this, I'm just not sure. Like, I think it would be different if I had like some scheduled things that I was going to go to, and like I had a plan of attack. I had no plan. Even if I hadn't gotten sick, I probably would have left anyway because it was just a lot. And yeah, it was, I don't think that I'm the target audience necessarily. Like, as much as I love sci-fi and fantasy, just being there, I don't know. Maybe if I had planned ahead and tried to do some of the celebrity things, but I'm not really interested in that. Like, I walked by. So Timok from The Last Dragon, he had a table there and he was signing pictures and stuff. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I should get a picture signed by Timok. And then I was like, what would I do with that? It'd be cool to say that I met him and get a picture with him, but like, other than posting it on social media, eh. So that's kind of my feeling about everything. Like, if I happen to meet somebody that I admire and I think is really cool and has inspired me personally, then that's a great experience. But just meeting up with celebrities, my brother is actually, friends with famous people, and I've met some, and so maybe the sheen is just not there for me like it is for some other people. I'm sound so cheap, like, oh, I hang out with famous people all the time, which is not the case, but like, maybe it's just not for me. Other things that happened. So last weekend, before the big breakthrough with the synopsis, I'd been working on the synopsis for a couple of days, and so I realized I needed to do some research. I decided I was going to put a scavenger hunt in the book as, something that one of the characters has to do, or something similar to a scavenger hunt. Like, I was doing research on scavenger hunts because my world is an alternate 1920s type of world, so I just wanted to see, when did scavenger hunts become a thing? And apparently it was in the 1930s, at least in America. The elites, or brought it from someplace in Europe. Some woman, I can't remember her name now, but she was responsible for starting a lot of like scavenger hunts in New York City that the rich people did during the Depression. And so the movie My Man Godfrey came up as, I think, the first instance in film that had a scavenger hunt. So I think that was a 1936 movie, and so I was like, oh, I should watch this movie for research. I love old movies. I grew up watching old movies because my mom loved them. And so it was on Amazon Prime, and I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And it was legitimate research because even though the 1930s is a little later than I picture my my series being in, it's close enough, Siri thought I was talking to her for some reason. Siri is scary. So anyway, I sat down and I watched My Man Godfrey, and it is one of the funniest movies I have seen in a very long time. It is hilarious. If you have Amazon Prime, I highly recommend you watch it if you can stand 1930s movies, and a lot of people can't. But yeah, so funny, really funny. Now it is, I don't know if it would be like a romantic comedy because there is a romance plotline, but 1930s romances worked differently than they do now. So like for me, there's there was a guy, there was Godfrey, and there were two sisters. And up until the very end, I wasn't sure which of the sisters he was going to end up with. There was one who was very sweet, but completely off her rocker. Like, there are these entitled rich sisters, and the other one was 100% bitch, and it could have gone either way as far as I was concerned. And then the way that they resolved it is not something that would fly today. It's always interesting to see these old movies and to see the interplay between men and women and how it has changed. So I actually rewatched it, like fast forwarding certain parts immediately afterwards, because I was like, wait, what? When did that? I wanted to see the point at which the movie told me that these people were right for each other. And it was so subtle as to not be there at all. Hilarious movie, highly recommended. The romance aspect is a bit suspect, but I still enjoyed it. Research can be very fun. Other news. I discovered that the pre-order is up for Cry of Metal and Bone, which is book 3 in Earthsinger Chronicles, and I will link to that in the show notes. Book 2 does sort of end with a cliffhanger, so I know that whenever that happens, people are like, when can I get book 3? And I'm like, well, I can tell you, it's going to be May 19th, 2020, and you can pre-order it right here. So I don't consider it like a hard evil cliffhanger, but it's definitely a break in the story. And that is partially because when I initially wrote Whispers, it wasn't going to be a cliffhanger, but the story expanded beyond what I thought it was. And I realized after beating my head against a wall for a few months that I had to split it into 2 books. And that had not been my initial plan with the series, but it ended up working out really nicely. And except for the fact that I had to put a cliffhanger when I didn't necessarily intend to, but I tried to make it as like resolution and then open door as possible, which I think is the best kind of cliffhanger, not like throw the book against the wall cliffhanger. Anyway, in reading, I read 2 really great books. I did get to read The Orchid Throne by Jeffe Kennedy, and it's really a beautiful book. It's a beautiful, slow burn, like intro to the trilogy that it gave me a very like Padme Amidala vibe with our main character, the queen, the Orchid Queen, and because there's these elaborate gowns and makeup that she wears, and she's has to put on this whole persona, and that aspect was really fascinating to me. I loved the hero, and yeah, it's I don't want to call it slow because I was never bored while reading it. Like a book is truly slow, I'm like, most times I won't finish it. I had no problem finishing it, but it is contemplative, I guess, or she's really laying groundwork, and it's not a fast pace, but it's definitely worth it, and it's definitely like evocative and really emotional. So I recommend that. I also read Before She Ignites by Jodi Meadows, which I really loved as well. Like, I'm going to be at an event with her next May, and so whenever possible, when I'm at events with people, I try to at least check out their books to see if I can, hopefully I'll like them and be able to really talk about them with them or recommend them to people. Unfortunately, I did. If I don't, I just don't say anything. But yeah, I know she had gotten a little bit of flack when this book came out because the main character is black and there's a black woman on the cover. It's a YA. And I thought the flack was bullshit, honestly. Like, it was like, oh, well, apparently it was the first black girl in a pretty dress YA cover. I could be wrong about this, but this is my recollection. And the chatter was that should have gone to a black author, which is fine, but it is not Jodi Meadows' fault. She had no control over that, and I don't think that she should have been called out on that at all. And so, and not only is the main character black, to my mind, everybody in the book is at least black or brown, which I was not expecting, because a lot of times you'll see with white authors, people are trying to write more diversely, and I totally support that. And, I thought she did a great job of putting in details that showed that she had done research, and it felt, well done to me. even more so that every single person in this world seems to be black, or the ones that we've met, the ones whose skin color was described were all brown. And I was like, I was just super impressed by that, because that is not what I expected. And aside from that, that is actually not the reason why I liked the book. The story was great too, but that was like the cherry on top for me, because it was unexpected. So it's yeah, I fell in love with the story. There's dragons. There's little like cute little dragons and big dragons, and recommend that one too. So if you're looking for something very good to read, I plan to read the rest of the trilogy. It's complete now, and yeah, good reading times. I also saw that a new podcast came out this week, and so I was looking through it and checking it out, and then I saw that it launched with 3 episodes and a Patreon. And that caused me a little bit of pause. Like, I totally think that artists should get paid for their work. I think I support a lot of Patreons. I support podcasts and artists and YouTubers. I fully believe that Patreon is a great thing for supporting people. But I only support people after I've consumed their content for a while, and they've proven that they are reliable with their schedule. You know, they put it out regularly. The content is of high quality. Like, I like it. I can recommend it. I get some value from it, whether it's entertainment or information or whatever. After maybe a few months of that, I will say, okay, let me check out their Patreon and support them. I don't support anybody on the first day that they launch something. And obviously it's optional, so I don't have to. But like, I don't know, I just felt some type of way about launching with a Patreon. And maybe it's just my own hangups. I do think it's a little bit presumptuous to be like, hey, we're here, give us money. But like, no shade, you know, it's we're all trying to make it. We all got bills to pay. And everybody does what they feel is best. But yeah, like, I have to wait for several months just to make sure that, you know, people are new podcasters. A lot of podcasts don't last that long. Like, you know, they realize, wow, this is not super easy doing this regularly and keeping the quality up, and then they disappear. Like, when I was doing research before starting this podcast, I found a lot that only had a handful of episodes, and then they've been gone for years. So that's just my feeling on it. Like, I'll probably check it out, and maybe in a few months after, you know, I've evaluated it, I will contribute. I mean, I don't contribute to every podcast I listen to, but the ones that I really get a lot out of it, the ones that I really really like, are the ones that I support. So, and everybody has to make their own decision. I mean, this podcast has a handful of people who have supported off the break, so obviously people feel differently than me. But like, I really do think that you should provide value before you ask for something. You know, like, you should give and prove yourself before you ask for someone to support you in some way. I was thinking about adding like a segment to the podcast about like fun facts I found during research. And this I don't think I was even researching. I just came across this. It's an article in The Atlantic about the electric flight of spiders. And it's so cool. It's one of those things that I'm going to like file away and hopefully use at some point, because apparently spiders can fly hundreds of miles using electricity. And this is the title of the article. And they sort of, what happens is like they float on the electromagnetic waves. I don't think I've ever seen spiders flying, quote unquote, but I think I've seen videos of it, maybe not in real life, but they sort of glide. And for a long time, people just thought it was something to do with their webbing or something, but they're actually like using the electromagnetic spectrum and flying hundreds of miles on it. It's a really cool article. I'll link to it in the show notes. And it's one of those things that I can see being like, oh, is this a magic system here? Can people use this? Are they using it? I mean, I have characters using Earthsong, which is my magic system, able to fly, but they're using the wind currents and they're manipulating the air and the wind currents to kind of keep them aloft. but it would be even cooler if they were manipulating the electromagnetic spectrum in some way, which I didn't even think about. I actually do a lot of like physics research. It doesn't necessarily come through in the books. It's just, it helps inform me. I sort of take science and then bastardize it horribly and then turn it into magic. And so this is one of those things that I would do, like maybe there is something to this because, Earth Song can manipulate nature, natural forces. It's life energy. And for me, that can extrapolate into any of the, air, water, fire, wind, and it should also correspond to things inside the earth. I mean, they can create earthquakes, so why not? Earthlingers should be able to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum of the earth, right? It's a little late in the series to add something like that, but it's just really cool to think about, and maybe I can refine it in other books in the future. There's a prequel. We're not talking about that yet, but on my mind. So, and in the prequel, their powers are more magnified because they're, well, it's not a spoiler because this book doesn't exist yet, but yeah, so maybe I can work it in. It's one of those things that's going to be in my mind, and I'll probably do some more research and see if I can figure out something, but it stood out for me. I thought it was really cool. So, up next for me, I got word from my editor's assistant that they're going to be launching book 4 internally. I don't have a date for book 4 yet, but I guess once they launch it, they pick the date. So I believe what happens when they launch a book internally is that they take it to the sales team, and I'm going to do this badly because it's been a while since someone explained this to me, but they take it to the sales team and the people, inside, and then they have a meeting about it. Okay, I will come back with that when I actually know what I'm talking about, but that is what I know. And so my editor's assistant needed the summary for book 4. And so I was like, well, I've got this 11-page summary. Is that too long? How long do you need it? Because I wouldn't want to read that either. She's like, oh, yes, and that, and also a 2-page version. I was like, okay, we could do that. And so I think she is going to have to work on like a blurb for it to give to the salespeople, as far as I know. So that's exciting. Like I told you before, they're working on the cover for that, and yeah, it's in motion. So this is the first time this has happened while I've been writing it, and so it does add a layer of, oh my gosh, to it. But it's also exciting that it's coming to be, and I think that things are going to get even busier. Whenever I get edits on book 3, I was going to have to turn that around pretty quickly because we have the date for book 3, and the cover is still coming for book 3 sometime soon. And I still have to work on the second novella, which is going to be coming this winter, and revise that. I really have to work on my schedule, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to try the gluten-free thing again while I'm home. So, new plan, not to try it when I'm traveling, because that doesn't work out. Because I know that if I had just gone and eaten the chicken fingers and fries, I would not have gotten sick. But trying to eat healthy backfired on me, and it's done that before. So I am into the revision. The revision so far is going well. I really enjoy this deep work crafting the scenes, making them, I want to say making them pretty, but it's like making them real, Like the first thing I had to do, a lot of it is rewriting. So that first day, I think Tuesday was the first day I actually started writing from scene 1. And I had to completely rewrite it because what I had in my fast draft, I had figured out through my detailed revision planning process that that's not what needed to happen. Like that's not the right introduction to that character in the beginning of the book. And so I had thought about what I wanted it to be. I pulled out my Alpha Smart. I did another fast draft of the scene, and then I immediately went to revise it. And so, whereas the true fast drafting is just Alpha Smart fast draft, now, whenever a lot of these scenes are going to have to be rewritten from scratch, a lot of the other ones can be just revised and modified. But I will fast draft. I always start with the fast draft just because it flows so much better, and I can separate the the writing side of the brain from the editorial side of the brain, which really works for me. But I can do that change immediately. So, spend 20 minutes fast drafting it and then just go in and start cleaning it up and revising. And that'll take a lot longer. But as long as I just do that once, like if I need to do two scenes, I would fast draft them both, do all of that in that one mindset, and then switch to the editorial mindset for both of them. And sometimes I will do it on different days. So I would fast draft and then the next day come back and do the edits, depending on my schedule and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it's working for me. And then the rest of the scenes that don't need to be rewritten from scratch, it's just going through. And when I say the scenes that don't, I haven't actually gotten to a scene that didn't need to be rewritten. Even if the actions are basically the same, I do a lot of rewriting. But the close, like, I don't know what to call it, like the careful rewriting, I don't do on the Alpha Smart. I only do the fast draft, vomiting out, as my professor used to say, vomiting out a draft on that. And then the careful work where I'm sitting with my thesaurus. I use masterwriter.com, which I highly recommend. It's paid. I don't know how much it is, but it's like the world's best thesaurus. It's got a huge dictionary, a synonym finder, a rhyming dictionary. People use it for songwriting and creative writing. It's got all kinds of stuff. So I have that open in a browser. The other thing I have open in a browser when I'm revising is One Stop for Writers. It's onestopforwriters.com, which is, it started as the Emotion Thesaurus, which a lot of people have heard of. So years ago, I got the books, the Emotion Thesaurus and then the Negative Traits Thesaurus. Then they started adding them. They have the Positive Traits Thesaurus. They have several other thesauri. And then they turned it into a website. So instead of like flipping through this book, I can search. And not only do they have those, they have Emotional Wound Thesaurus. They've got Emotional Amplifier Thesaurus. They've got Physical Feature Thesaurus, settings, shapes, symbolism, talents and skills, textures, weather, character motivation. They've got this fantastic character profile generator that I use, and I created these thick profiles. I mean, when I was going through and having problems and having to go back and do more character work, I was going to One Stop for Writers and using their character builder tool. They've got plot builders. They've got so much. I haven't used half of the stuff they have, but the stuff that I use a lot. So MasterWriter, OneStopForWriters.com, those are the things that are open in my browser. Scrivener is open, and that's how I write. That's how I do the deep work revision writing. And yeah, so far so good. It takes a while. Like each scene takes at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. Some will take longer. Some take a couple days. I revise it, do a pass, and then by that time I'm probably done. So the next day I come back, reread it, do another quick pass on it, and then move on to the next one. So everything gets at least 2 passes, and then hopefully at the end I go back through and do another pass. I have to stop myself from like changing words over and over and over again, because I will, tweak a word and then the next day come and tweak it back to the way it was before, which is insane. Something that has been stopping me from doing that is Scrivener's revision mode, which I never used, and then my friend told me about it, and I was like, oh, what happens is you put it in revision mode and you choose a color, and there's default colors there. So revision 1, there's 5 by default. And so I changed the colors because I don't like to do it in red. So revision 1 for me is purple. So I put it in revision mode, and then any changes I make to the text are done in that color. So I can see the words I changed. And then the next pass, I'll put it in revision 2 and say that color is orange. So I can see the purple changes, I can see the orange changes, and you can do that as you go through the passes. And so that way, it prevents me from changing a word, like he walked towards the building, and then I'll be like, oh no, he walked to the building. and then I want to change it back next week. So he walks towards the building. These are like the little ridiculous things I do who has time for that? Like, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. And the copy editor is going to change it anyway because I always use the wrong towards. Is it toward or towards? And whatever one I choose is wrong, and the copy editor changes it. So, but like, it's just this like weird word changes that don't matter. And so using the revision mode has helped me not to obsess about those kind of things when I really need to focus on the story. And whether or not I get a line edit, or regardless of the quality of the copy edit, like, the reader doesn't care whether it's towards or to. And I don't really care either. I'm just like, it's just my mind firing too many times. So those are all, it's like a lot. That's what's happening with me. So I will be revising for the foreseeable future and making this into a real book that other people can read. And I feel good. It's scary. It is still scary because it's never going to be this shining vision in your head. It's never going to be that way. But I'm trying to make it the best thing I can, So that's it for me for this week. It's been a full week full of ups and downs. This week had its own plot line, its own dark moment, and then the resolution happened, and we're here. So I will talk to you next week. Until then, happy reading. For episode show notes and to learn more about me and my books, go to lpenelope.com. Subscribe to My Imaginary Friends wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the video episodes on YouTube. And please leave a rating and review to help support the show.